This is Julianne Condia, host of Rewritten. Thank you so much for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hi, this is Emily.
This is Lindsay.
And this is Elizabeth,
co-hosts of Beauties and Headcanons here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Once you are done with this episode, we hope you'll come check out our show, Beauties and Headcanons, where we talk nerdy to you about fandoms, fan fiction, and all pop culture for nerds that you can think of. A new show comes out every Friday.
Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Throughout history, the course of sports has been shaped by one thing, the fans.
From the moments you never dreamed of,
Wolpoff has saved the USA's life in this World Cup! Paul, the runner! Loose ball! It's good! Gonzaga! The slipper still fits!
To the moments that still give you nightmares.
Behind the bag! It gets through Buckner! Here comes Knight and the Mets win it! He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl! Brady has his fifth!
through the good and the bad, fans have helped change the games we watch and the players we love.
They may not be the most logical people.
You are a factory of sadness! I'll see you Sunday.
But they know their teams better than anybody.
They'll blow in the ninth.
You may not always see them, but you know where to find them.
After all, there's nothing quite like the view from the cheap seats.
Broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Grab a chair and enjoy all there is in
the cheap seats.
Welcome back to the Cheap Seats, everyone. Hoehne and Max Wolpoff on the Wednesday show presented by Squadcast FM on Public House Media. How's everyone doing today? Max, how are you doing this morning?
It's just been a depressing last couple of days here in the D.C. area. The rain hasn't stopped since Monday.
Oh man. Well, don't let that rain on our show. I'm expecting a great show from you, Max.
Oh, I am inside and I'm feeling fine right now.
See, we had a lot of rain the last couple of days. You guys must be getting what, in your area, what we were getting in the Midwest a couple of days ago.
What's strange is that if I watch the radar like hour by hour, it's coming from the south and coming from Florida. So I can thank Florida for yet another thing today. I already thank Florida for having the most entertaining crime log of any state in the country. So thanks again for this weather, baby. I love it.
All right, Max. Well, hey, we met each other last week. Let's touch on that quickly. We finally met each other for the first time. So there was proof that there was an actual human behind our voices for each other. Yeah,
it was pretty cool. The All-Star Game came to D.C. Keith came to the All-Star Game because of his job. I went because it's in my backyard, and I was able to score tickets pretty well. So we finally were able to meet. It took a little bit of finagling to figure out where we're going to meet and what landmark I was talking about when. So we met under the Max Scherzer sign, the best Washington National. And it was pretty cool to actually talk to you as if there was nothing to yell about, because there's nothing to yell about when I'm in the middle of enjoying a baseball game.
Right, but you know what? Now we're back doing the show. So of course I have to push your buttons and see how much I can get you upset within an hour's time span.
Oh, I expect nothing less from you.
All right, well, let's get started. Let's see how aggravated we can get you this morning. Let's talk about LeBron James, because that always seems what we talk about on the show. Nothing too major, just a quick mention here. The Akron Rubber Ducks, they are a minor league affiliate in Akron to the Cleveland Indians. And, Max, they retired LeBron James's jersey, his number, a minor league baseball team. Now, obviously, it's because he's from Akron. He's meant a lot to the area, of course, and provided a lot of money to the area. But what do you think about this?
I think this is just another minor league baseball promotion that they're trying to get people in the gate. They're trying to get people in the door, and this is one big way to do it. throw a big party, a huge celebration for literally any small local legend they can. This time, it's not so small. It's LeBron freaking James. This is a double-A baseball team. They are pretty good with their fans. They have a pretty good track record of having some people at least try to make the major leagues. I'm not upset by this at all. This is nothing new for minor league baseball.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any, by stretch of the imagination to think that this is anything other than a minor league baseball. Is something for them to try to get fans out there. They have a nice jersey emblem of him out in the outfield, and you know what? Fine. It's a cute thing for a local Akron team to do for a guy that obviously means a lot to the area. Now, of course, it's a LeBron James thing, so some people are up in arms about it and think that it's completely stupid. But you know what? I think it's pretty entertaining, and I think it's great. They wanted to be the first team to have the distinction of retiring LeBron James's number. Obviously, the Cavaliers have not done that yet. The Lakers haven't done it yet. I don't know if that's really going to happen for him, anyways, in LA, unless he wins a number of titles, which I don't see happening. But it'll be interesting. We'll see what happens.
Man, who I really feel bad for here is David Spear, a pitcher for the Rubber Ducks, who has to change his number now, literally because he had to run a promotion for this.
Yeah, he has to change his number in place of a guy who has never played baseball before. But
hey, if Michael Jordan can take 2 years off and play baseball and still come back and destroy world, LeBron James can do the same thing, and we already have our Space Jam sequel.
True. All right, moving from the diamond onto the gridiron. Johnny Manziel, he is a Montreal Alouette after he was traded from the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And to be honest with you, Max, I thought that I'm not a big Johnny Manziel fan, and I think I have a pretty realistic view of who he is as a football player as most people, but considering the raw talent that he has, I expected him to have much more of an impact in the Canadian Football League right off the bat, just because he's still young, and being such a natural athlete, I thought he was going to come into Hamilton and make an impact. However, he has not played a down for them in the regular season, and now he is traded to Montreal, where Coach Mike Sherman says he did not trade for Manziel to have him sit on the bench. So it looks like Mike Sherman is going to have him out there rather quickly.
Look, let me put it to you this way. Montreal stinks right now. They're 1-4. They have the worst point score in the entire league. They suck. They needed a huge change. And this is about as big a change as they could get. Hamilton's doing okay. They're at 2-3 in a 5-game season so far. But right now, Montreal needs all the help they can get. Okay, so funny story about this. I was actually at a wedding this weekend in Massachusetts, and one of the channels on the basic hotel package that we got managed to actually show CFL football. Okay. So we got to watch Montreal play Calgary. And Montreal, let me put it nicely, they were bad. They stunk. Their quarterback was bad. Their offensive line was bad. Their passing game was weak. Their defense stunk. This is a big name that they can bring in, and not only bring in tickets, but pretty much also just anything is better than what they've got right now.
Yeah, and I think it'll help Manziel too. Obviously, this is what he needed. He needed a team that was down and out, that did not have much of a chance to win moving forward. So it's somebody that they can with some natural ability that they can plug into the offense and say, hey, you know what, let's get a couple of more fans in the crowd. I don't know if Canadian football fans up in Canada really care about Johnny Manziel. He's a big name, so I'm sure he'll get some people to the fans, but it's a way to get butts in seats, a guy with some natural ability, and we'll see if he can make any immediate improvements, moving forward for them. But we'll see. I'm not big on Canadian football, so I only have to go on what I read in the headlines, really, as far as that's concerned.
Look, the CFL is definitely not as big in Canada as the NFL is big in the United States, for sure. I mean, I think the NFL, some teams are bigger in Canada than their CFL team counterparts, except for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. If you're ever going to know a CFL team, know the Roughriders. Rough Rider fans travel everywhere, and they always travel in Rough Rider gear. It is a common thread at sporting events to see how many Saskatchewan Rough Riders jerseys I can spot in a non-CFL game.
It's just a great name, too, isn't it? The Saskatchewan Rough Riders. It's a great name. It's very striking. Like, who's your team? Oh, the Rough Riders. The Saskatchewan Rough Riders. It's very striking. It's very tough. I like it.
And they're easily one of the best successful teams in the CFL history, and there's a good reason for it.
All right, now on to the hardwood, Carmelo Anthony, Max. He's a Houston Rocket. And now you were talking about this a little bit before we went on the air. Let me get your thoughts.
He's basically been a Houston Rocket for a while. I mean, this should not shock anybody. But, Gavalt, Houston, why do you need him? Why? I'm very puzzled why the Rockets decided that this is their guy.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's going to make headlines, and he's still a good player. They got him for the minimum, got him for the league's veteran minimum salary. So someone who's been a superstar for a good amount of their career and lately has still been a good player that can score if you need him to. I think it's a good ad, for the amount of money that they were able to get him for. However, I would agree they're doing just fine without someone who can be a bit of a distraction at times. So it'll be interesting to see how this works out for them.
They're paying for a lot more than his basketball play when you sign Carmelo Anthony. Wherever he has gone the last few years, it's been a traveling circus to follow him. He had a hard time in New York. He has been traded by the Thunder. The last few teams that Carmelo Anthony has been a part of have kind of been disasters in their own way.
Yeah, it's true, but I don't think he's gone to a team that, except for Oklahoma City, where you can argue that they were still a good team without Kevin Durant. I think this is really the first team that he's going to that is a contender right off the bat. I think him going to Oklahoma City, there was the idea that he would help make them a contender. They weren't there anymore without Durant, and they got him, and they thought that he would help them contend. Now you have him coming into the Houston Rockets, where obviously they were a great team last year. They blew the shot of making it to the NBA Finals. Now he's with them. So I think the expectation here from a veteran like him is that he's going to help them get over that edge.
And being signed for veteran minimum, he's not going to be expected to shoulder much of the burden of making the Houston Rockets great. If he comes on as like a sixth man or is kind of your rotated substitute, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, and I think that's what you need. I really think that's what you need him for. However, he had a press conference and somebody asked him what he thought of. He said something about coming off the bench, and Melo kind of laughed him off. And I don't think that's a great sign, because I think Carmelo is at this point greatly overvaluing himself. Now, you have to do that as a star player and as an athlete in general. You have to be your own biggest fan to a certain extent in order for people to, get behind you as well. But, I think he is greatly overstating his value, and I think he has to, familiarize himself with the fact that he's not that star guy anymore. This is a James Harden team, and he's no longer the top player on the team.
The thing with Anthony, he does not have to be the star. However, if you as a player, and the player of Anthony's caliber, even from a few years ago, you have to be your biggest fan. It's you and your agent. That's how you make money.
All right, that'll do it for the first segment of this show. Coming up on this Wednesday edition of the Cheap Seats, we're going to talk about the college football playoff. Very big name coach recently said that he would like to see the playoff expanded to 16. What coach was that? We'll talk about it. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? But coming up directly after the break, we're going to talk about Saquon Barkley and his huge deal that he just signed with the New York Giants. A couple of other rookies are not currently signed yet. What does that mean going into these mandatory training camps coming up this week? But before we go, we want to remind you that the show is presented by Squadcast FM on Public House Media. Listen to us on iTunes and Google Podcasts and much more. And we will see you back after this break on the Cheap Seats.
This is Kim Meyer, the host of Choose to Rise here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Choose to Rise, where we talk about living with positive mindsets, how to increase our confidence, building our faith, and living out our life on purpose. A new show comes out via podcast every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And if you want to catch the episode live instead, stop by Public House Media around 6:45 Central Standard Time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday as well. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Choose to Rise. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome back to the Cheap Seats, everyone. It's the Wednesday edition. Keith Hoehne, Max Wolpoff joining you. Of course, you can always listen to our show on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and more. And not only our show, not only our Wednesday show, however, I seem to value this one the most because, hey, I'm on it, my man Max is on it, but always check out the Monday and Friday editions of the Cheap Seats as well. All right, Max, moving forward, Saquon Barkley, arguably one of the biggest signings in the NFL draft. He has just signed with the New York Giants, and it is quite a deal. $31 million, all guaranteed, $15 million up front right away upon signing. Saquon Barkley is now a very rich individual.
Oh, yes. If I was to be paid $15 million right now, I have no idea what I would do with $15 million.
Yeah, what would I'd put a good 14.5 in the bank, but I'm not lying. I might just spend $500,000. Just boom, just might just go out and start spending some cash right away.
All right, now I actually am looking at the New Jersey Smart Asset Tax Calculator, and I'm trying to figure out how much of these taxes how much of the money that he was paid went to New Jersey in taxes. Because, again, I'm assuming because the Giants play in New York, he's living in New Jersey. I might be wrong on that. He might be living in New York. But the maximum value that the site can hold is $10 million. So I literally can't calculate it.
They're not taking into consideration the deals that whoa. Do you hear that?
No, I did not hear that.
Hang on. Something is going terribly wrong in my headset.
Well, I don't hear it. So, all right. Well, done.
All right. I think it's better. My God, What was that? All right. Sorry. Let's just restart that segment. I'm sorry.
All set. You got it.
All right. All right. We'll go back from the top. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Cheap Seats, everyone. It's the Wednesday show with Keith Hoehne and Max Wolpoff. We touched upon some interesting stories on the first segment. The Rubber Ducks of Akron retired LeBron James's number. Carmelo Anthony is now a Rocket. And Johnny Manziel, we'll see how he does in his new home for the CFL. However, moving forward, Max, Saquon Barkley, he's now a very rich individual. He signed a 4-year, $31.2 million contract with the Giants, but the most interesting part of this deal is that it is all guaranteed, about $15 million right up front upon signing. Max, what do you think of this deal?
I think that this is the new way the NFL is probably going to go with fully guaranteed contracts. I mean, the NHL already has fully guaranteed contracts. Players love having that. But the NFL as a business has almost never been able to support every single player getting a fully guaranteed deal. Especially with the amount of money involved here. This is a worthwhile investment for the Giants. Barkley is pretty much a sure thing, barring, catastrophe, which is always likely in a full contact sport. But I really think that the fully guaranteed contracts come the next NFL CBA will be a big sticking point for the players' union. They're going to want every player to get their due share.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you moving forward. This is the new wave. All these players getting fully guaranteed deals. I think that's obviously what's coming up for most of these deals in the future. Of course, I think the first deal that we saw in the NFL recently with fully guaranteed money was Kirk Cousins going to Minnesota. Is that right?
Yes, you are correct.
Yeah, so Cousins, he did everyone a huge favor with that. Obviously, now I think that the Vikings, overvalued Cousins a little bit. Obviously, he's been a good quarterback for Washington the last couple of years, but to give him a deal with all guaranteed money, that obviously led the way for Matt Ryan to get fully guaranteed money, and now Aaron Rodgers, the big thing. I'm obviously a Packer fan. Aaron Rodgers is, I wouldn't say really holding out on Green Bay, but Green Bay, they've been trying to get a deal done for a while now with Rodgers, and obviously it's nothing close to what Rodgers is looking for. But whenever they get this deal done, I'm sure every penny of it is going to be guaranteed as well.
This is the big thing for star players especially, and the fact that it's happening to a rookie fresh out of the draft, this could be a new world order come the next couple of years with near guaranteed generational talent as far as scouting evaluations go. If this is the wave of the future, man, you gotta really start thinking about the little guy here with like the small safety or the strong safety or maybe even the kick return specialist who is going to be cut after one season and not get the money that they signed for. I really am starting to think here that the stars might ruin it for the little guy, especially when it comes to the finances of running an NFL team.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Where's all the money going to go for these role players that you have to keep on a roster if you're giving every single penny of it to your, one quarterback and, one running back?
Well, great point, because then you have three players you basically have to pay a lot of money to. Your left or right tackle, depending on the handedness of your quarterback, and your running back. Maybe your wide receiver swap for a running back, 3 or 4 players.
And you really only have to pay your wide receiver those top dollars if you don't have a quarterback that you have to pay top dollar to anyways. Because I hate to go back to the Packers here again, but obviously, Greg Jennings, when he had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, he did great. However, the second he moved to Minnesota, he was no longer the wide receiver everyone thought he was. So, as far as wide receivers are concerned, you only have to pay them really as much as you think you have to pay your quarterback. Is it the receiver that makes the quarterback, or is it the quarterback that makes the receiver?
Oh, that's always been the debate of what straw stirs the drink and who's the one that does all of it. Well, let's face reality here. More often than not, it's the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless you're I'm thinking for Pittsburgh now. I'm starting to think that it's more Antonio Brown than it is Ben Roethlisberger. However, it's hard to go against a guy with Roethlisberger's resume at this point. But that's just a side note for me.
So I got a question for you. So Saquon Barkley's contract paid him $15 million in signing bonuses up front. What would you do with your money?
Oh man, $15 million.
What would you do? Here's $15 million. Granted, I think like 49% of it, because he's in New Jersey, will be heading to taxes. So that's $7.3 million to taxes. So you get about $8 million. What would you do with your money?
Honestly, 50. It's obviously more than I could ever think of to actually do. So I'm thinking that I'm going to buy a pretty nice house. I don't think I need anything really lavish at this point on my rookie deal. Considering that this might not be my forever home, I'm going to buy a decent house that I think that I can get a return on investment on in the future, put the majority of that in the bank, maybe get a somewhat nice car, but I'm not a car guy. I'm going to be very practical with it. I'm going to put the majority of that away, make my immediate life a little better, moving forward, and that's pretty much it for me, man.
You know what? That's a very shrewd decision, and I applaud you. Because I very much would not be boring with this.
I'm boring, man.
Oh man, I am spending all of it on partying. I am having a ball. Here comes the big DJ booth. I'm buying the big house. I am living it up. Let's go.
See, I picked the Peyton Manning route, and you picked the Ryan Leaf route. Isn't that the big distinction people made about them the second after they got drafted? Somebody asked Peyton Manning, "What are you doing now that you're a professional football player? You have all this money." And he said, "Well, I'm going to sit down in a room quiet by myself, and I'm going to learn the playbook." Somebody asked Ryan Leaf the same thing, "What are you doing?" And he said, honestly, and it's what he did. I'm going to Vegas and I'm going to party with my friends a little bit because now I'm a professional athlete.
And I think my friends, and these are my friends from high school, bear in mind, they would hate me if I didn't at least throw one party with all that money. I've got to have one.
Yeah, of course. You got to have one. You're absolutely right. Are you going home? Are you going home to your hometown and having this big party, or are you inviting everybody to your nice new house that you just bought too?
Oh no, we're not going home, everybody. We're going to the big city. We're coming to the new dig. We're gonna break it in with a big party, and then I'm gonna send everybody home so I can actually learn the playbook.
Okay. You see, I'm so boring. I think I'm gonna go the other route. I'm going back home. And I'm going to disguise it as I'm not going to make everybody come to me. I'm going to go to everyone else, but it's really only because I don't want anyone to screw up my new house and all my cool new stuff.
You know what? You make a good point about that. I may have to reconsider some things.
Because there are ways that you can play that off, not inviting everyone to your place. I'm coming to everyone else. I don't want to put everybody out and through that trouble of having to come to me. I'm going to show the old town some love, come back to them. There are so many ways you can play that off without really telling everyone, I don't want you to come to my place screwing up my cool new stuff that I just paid a lot of money for.
That is a fair assessment. And I'd still invite everybody to the new day.
So a quick note here. We were talking about Saquon Barkley and the big deal that he just signed. Let's talk about one big guy that has not signed a deal yet, and that is Baker Mayfield, the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, obviously. Not yet with a contract, and we are coming very close to our mandatory mini camps coming up. What does this mean for Baker Mayfield? Obviously we saw Joey Bosa go a very long time without signing his deal. He seemed to have a great rookie year anyways, but of course he was not a quarterback. How important is it for Baker Mayfield to be out there for Cleveland right away, getting his timing down with his wideouts and the offense in general?
I think what people are concerned about here is that the Cleveland Browns didn't just draft a Jamarcus Russell type of player. Russell, when he was taken first overall, took 6 weeks to finally sign his contract. I think everyone's really hoping that this holdout is not an indication of a similar career path.
Yeah, I would agree. Now, obviously, I think the money involved with the Jamarcus Russell deal is something that a lot of people look at too. This is when the top quarterbacks that were taken were given, tons and tons and tons of money coming out of the draft immediately. I think the last big one was Sam Bradford. I think he got a guaranteed, $40 million out of the gate with it, a $60 million contract, something like that. So I think Jamarcus Russell, I think when people give him the bust status, I think they look at his contract as well. Obviously, I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to sign as large of a deal as we've seen in the past. However, with the Saquon Barkley deal with his $31 million guaranteed, it's hard to imagine that Baker Mayfield will settle for much less.
Mayfield probably shouldn't settle for much less. I mean, the market value, especially as a quarterback, is probably higher than what Barkley is going to command as a running back. Considering, let's face it, the Cleveland Browns kind of stink.
Yeah, kind of.
You're an upgrade on whatever they had.
Yeah, you're an upgrade on what they have, and now obviously I think you have to be realistic with the situation that you're going into. Now, of course, you have to take the money that you can get when you can get it as a young player. However, this is going to sound stupid, but the bigger contract you sign, the bigger the expectations are for you right away, and the more immediate you have to perform. And if the Browns overpay for Mayfield, and if Mayfield underperforms, he might find himself without a job sooner rather than later. Johnny Manziel.
Yes. However, I should understand this by now, but Cleveland's got to be patient with somebody.
That's the thing. I cannot believe how impatient teams are with quarterbacks nowadays. I really cannot believe it. So many teams are impatient with so many quarterbacks. If a quarterback that's taken in the first round nowadays does not have a breakout season where he's the rookie of the year and is thrown for 4,000 yards with 40 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions, it seems as though he's labeled a bust right off the bat, when really playing quarterback is probably the hardest job in professional sports.
Okay, are you referencing Robert Griffin III, the 2012 Rookie of the Year, who did basically exactly what you just said, and then got injured in the playoffs?
Right, and you can touch on a number of players. Vince Young was Rookie of the Year too, his first season in the NFL, and he quickly dropped off. And so many people, and that's my point, so many people, they're quick to label, these guys the second coming of Joe Montana and, nowadays, let's say Tom Brady. And really, when you have to give these quarterbacks 3 years, I think you have to give a quarterback 3 years when you draft someone in the first or second round that you intend to start right off the bat. That's not a 1 to 2 year deal to see how he's going to do immediately. You have to give the quarterback 3, maybe 4 years, give them their entire rookie contract to really prove whether or not they can play, who they can play with, and in what situations they can play in. Because from week to week, even from season 1 to season 2, so many things are going to change that I think whenever you draft a quarterback, you have to commit to a 3-year investment at least. But that's just me.
You're also adding patience to a business that is notoriously impatient.
Yeah. Now I'm going to say it again. I'm going to go back to it, and I hate doing it because they're my team and people know they're my team. But let's look at the Packers for a second here. Aaron Rodgers is now obviously one of the better quarterbacks to ever play the game. They drafted him with their first-round draft pick, and he didn't even play his first 3. He had to sit behind Brett Favre. They gave a quarterback 3 years to develop without even expecting him to play a down. And I don't think it's a coincidence that he is the player that he is, given the time that he had to really learn the game. Now, obviously, not everyone has the opportunity to learn from a future and now current Hall of Famer, but I think that's one of the last examples that you can look at where a team really, really gave their first round draft pick quarterback time to develop, and I think it's paid off pretty well.
Oh, for sure. It's paid off in the sense that they have an MVP candidate perennially in their backfield, ready to take the passes and ready to throw it to anybody and everybody. Especially since that 1 year Green Bay won the Super Bowl, it was basically Aaron Rodgers and anybody who could catch a pass.
Yeah, no, we could go into that all day. Obviously, they just had a next man up mentality, obviously all centered around Aaron Rodgers doing his thing. But we could go into that all day. At least I could, because I could relive a Packers Super Bowl season anytime you want to talk about it. But moving on, let's take a break. And coming back, we will talk about the college football playoff. Who is the big name coach that suggested an 8-team expansion and then a 16-team expansion? We will talk about that coming up. Of course, this is the Cheap Seats presented by Squadcast.fm on Public House Media. Check us out on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and more. And don't forget to go to thephmedia.com, not only checking out our Wednesday show, the Monday show, and the Friday show of the Cheap Seats as well, but check out a lot of the other cool podcasts that Public House Media has to offer. And one more thing, don't forget to like our Facebook page where you can weigh in on our daily poll. This week's poll, we're going to talk about that next. How many teams should the college football playoff expand to? We'll talk about that and more next on the Cheap Seats.
I'm the Greg.
And I am Dave Show.
We host the Greg and Dave Show on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out our show, The Greg and Dave Show, where we talk about strange, bizarre, and sometimes just downright quirky news stories that you may not have heard about.
A new show comes out every Wednesday. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes. And hey, thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome back to the Cheap Seats, everyone. Keith Hoehne, Max Wolpoff here on the Wednesday show. Let's review what we talked about a little earlier in the show. The Rubber Ducks retire LeBron James' number. Manziel traded to Montreal in the Canadian League. Carmelo is now a Rocket. And in the last segment, we just talked about the Saquon Barkley deal and other past rookie deals made by NFL players, what that means for the future as well, with all that guaranteed money that Saquon has now, $31 million in the bank. But now let's touch on the other side of the gridiron. It's the college football game. And Max, Jim Harbaugh, during the Big Ten Media Days, said that he has very much interest in expanding the college football playoff to 8 teams and then eventually 16 teams. Now, the college football playoff was developed as a result of many people's dislike for the bowl championship series, where you just had a bunch of high-level bowl games and 2 teams just randomly picked to play in the national championship. Now you have a little bit of a playoff, and a lot of people liked that idea. However, nobody was happy with just 4 teams, and instantly people started saying expand it to 8, expand it to 16. Max, what are your thoughts on it? Do you like the current format? Do you think it should be expanded? What do you think?
I think the playoff added a lot of drama to the national championship conversation. Because let's face it, the last couple of years, Alabama probably would not have been in at least one of those championship games, especially not last year if we were still under the old system. However, they were still rewarded because they were able to win against Clemson, and then they were able to beat Georgia on 2nd and 26 in overtime. What baffles me is when it comes to expanding this playoff to 8 and to 16, I'm confused as to just how long the college football season is really going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how long can this go? The school year starts, for most schools anyway, in early September, and they play 11 or so games a season, maybe 12 if you get into a bowl game, and maybe 12 if you make your conference championship game. The college football finals is on the second weekend of January. How long do you really want the season to go? Do you want it to stretch into February? Do you want it to stretch beyond the Super Bowl? Do you want to compete with the Super Bowl for media attention? There is a business end of this decision that isn't just let's have more teams, let's have more games. There's also the idea that you have to be done by a certain point to get the maximum number of viewers possible.
Right. And obviously Jim Harbaugh is coming from a point where he's had some good teams, and I think he would really like his, semi-good Michigan football team to have the possibility to play in a college football playoff, especially considering they haven't really played up to their ability, a lot of people think. But obviously beyond everything on the gridiron, I think Jim Harbaugh's I think the motivation behind this for him is more greatly on the football side of things because he's a football coach. But obviously it would mean a lot for ESPN, who obviously carries the college football playoff. And as you said, things on the business end. And I think really that's all it comes down to. I think it comes down to what's best for business, because if you want to make an argument of what's best for the players, even playing this far into the season, and even a college football playoff of 4 teams where you have to have some of these players playing 14 games a season, I don't think that's the best for them. So now you make the argument, all right, well, they're already playing 14. What's the harm if they play 16? And I think that's the argument that a lot of people are going to make. A lot of people will say that, you can't do that because you can't take the guys out of class for that long. Nobody cares how often these guys spend time in class. And I think let's get that delusion out of the window right now. Nobody cares how long these guys spend in class. The coaches don't care as long as the players are eligible. The players don't care as long as they're eligible. It comes down, I think, the main argument to, as you said, how much more profitable can it be? And really that's it. How much more profitable can it be?
Yeah, it only comes down to one thing: money, 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 and always more money.
Yep, that's what I was getting at. Two things that it really meant. No, really only one thing matters. It's about the money.
So what the format that was talked about was expanding it to 8 teams, and first-year Nebraska head coach Scott Frost probably had the best out there idea. It was the 5 conference champions and 3 at-large teams. Which, I'd be okay with that. I would like that. It would give the UCF Knights a chance to actually be the national champions.
Yeah, I like the idea that people think that UFC would have actually been. Now, UFC can call themselves the national champions all they want. Ipso facto, we won this game, and this team beat that team, and we beat Auburn, and Auburn beat Alabama, and we're the only undefeated team left, so we're the national champions. You guys are not. You're not the national champions because you did not play in the national championship game. But hey, if they want to call themselves the national champs, I think that's a cute, fun thing for them to do. However, if it's just if it's me making this, I think the 5-3 format works. But however, to touch on your point, to think that a team late in the season, a UCF team late in the season, after playing 13 games, is going to stay on the field with an Alabama or a Georgia that late in the season, I don't see that happening at all. I think that's a terrible game.
Okay. I'd still like to watch it.
Oh, I'd love to watch it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd love the idea of watching it, but I think after the first 7.5 minutes when it's 14-0, I don't think I'm going to enjoy it that much anymore.
You may not, but you know what? Any given Saturday, man, I would love to see it. Yeah,
that's very true. We can always go back to Appalachian State at the Big House in Week 1. What a game that was, I think, back in 2007 or something like that. Of course, Michigan losing to Appalachian State. That's probably the largest football upset of all time in college football. But all right, so we're talking about A teams. We just touched on the 5-3 format. Max, what do you think of 16? Now, Jim Harbaugh said 16 later on in his comment. What do you think of 16 teams? What does the format look like then?
Man, I really think at that point, if it comes to 16 teams, you have to start talking about dramatically restructuring the college football season. Okay. For anybody who has the delusion that this will water down the regular season, yeah, sure. Let's all watch Clemson play the Citadel. I would love to see the Citadel Bulldogs have a chance. No. You're wrong. There are at least 1 to 2 games every year that are pretty much check them off. This team is going to win. I've had enough of that argument. I've had enough of it. However, if you want the season to be done by the Super Bowl, start the playoffs earlier.
Right. And I think that's exactly what you'd have to do with these teams having, nearly a month off between, these guys that make the college football playoff, the Alabamas, it's nearly a month from the SEC championship game to the college football playoff. 2 weeks, you get 2 weeks, I'd say, if you bring it to that point. The NFL, you have the AFC and the NFC championship game. 2 weeks later, you have the Super Bowl. And people even think that 2 weeks is too long. They used to have it only be 1 week. Now, obviously, with the media day and everything that goes around the Super Bowl, now you really need those 2 weeks. But you get 2 weeks in the NFL between the championship games and the Super Bowl. I'd say give these guys 2 weeks between the championship games in their specific conferences and the college football playoff. I really think that's really how you'd have to do it. And I think 2 weeks is all you need anyways.
And are you really going to be upset when the college football playoff cuts into your enjoyment of the Bahamas Bowl? I don't think so. I really don't think people are going to be that upset if the first few weeks of bowl season suddenly have the first round of the college football playoff. I think people would actually welcome it.
I'd welcome that too, because all these low-level bowl games that nobody wants to watch, I don't want to watch them either. So, other than having like you said, the Bahamas Bowl on in the background in the house when I'm doing something else, I don't care about that. Give me more football that I care about. And I think the only way you do that for the college football season after those championship games is to expand that college football playoff and start it early. I think that's the way to do it. And I think eventually it will happen because there's so much more money to be had that way. And like we said, it's all about the money and it's all about the ratings, not so much the players' safety and what it means for them in their classes.
Even if you started the college football playoff a week earlier, when you have a round of 8, then a round of 4, then a round of 2, you'd be starting it around Christmas. Then you'd go to New Year's. You could still have your semifinals on the New Year's Day games. Then you go to January 8th and you have your championship.
Yep.
I don't really think people are going to be that upset if you cut in one extra week for the playoffs.
No, I don't think so at all. I think that's the way to go about it. We'll see. The college football season is just getting ramped up. Teams are starting their practices soon, and I'm looking forward to college football. That's my sport. I'm really looking forward to it, and we'll see if specifically we'll see how Michigan can do with Jim Harbaugh. They've drastically underperformed. He is 1-6 against his major rivals in Michigan State and Ohio State, and he has to win this year against Ohio State to be the only Michigan coach in history not to start 0-4 against Ohio State. And that will really be something to watch in the college football world. All right, moving forward after the break, we're going to talk about the Baltimore Orioles and how bad they are. There's no other way to dress it up coming out of the break other than that. The Baltimore Orioles are terrible. We're going to talk about it on this next segment. However, don't forget to listen to our podcast and so many other podcasts on iTunes and Google Podcasts. Learn more about our show and Public House Media on thephmedia.com. And don't forget to like our Facebook page and weigh in on the poll question, how many teams should be in the college football playoff? Max and I just touched on that a moment ago. We will be back on the cheap seats after this.
How's it going, everybody? This is Keith.
And Katie, hosts of Coffee with Keith and Katie, here on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. When you're done here, I hope you'll check out our show, Coffee with Keith and Katie,
where we talk about our lives and relationship over a cup of coffee.
A new episode airs on Facebook Live every Monday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Coffee with Keith and Katie.
Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome back to the Cheap Seats, everyone. Keith Hoehne, Max Wolpoff on this Wednesday edition of the Cheap Seats presented by Squadcast.fm on Public House Media. Don't forget to check out our podcast and many other podcasts on iTunes and Google Podcasts, and learn more about our show and many other shows on phmedia.com. And don't forget to go to our Facebook page, like the page, and then definitely weigh in on our poll question. Max and I just touched on it last segment. How many teams should be in the college football playoff? It's currently at 4. Should it be 8? Should it be 16? That's what Jim Harbaugh thinks. And Max, what do you think about the Baltimore Orioles? They are absolutely atrocious right now, Max. They're terrible. It's never a good sign when you're as bad as you are and you're giving up your best player. Obviously, in Manny Machado, he is now a Dodger. Has gotten off to a pretty good start with the Dodgers as well, I might add. But yeah, once you're giving away your best players to a team that's already doing terribly, you've obviously written off the rest of the year. Obviously, the rest of their season has been determined for them long ago. But you're accepting the fact that you're going to lose a lot more games, and you're just preparing for the future. And once you've gotten to that point in the season, you're going to lose a heck of a lot more. And this could very well go down as the worst team in Major League Baseball history in a single season.
It might just be the shining beacon of hope that Adam Jones and Chris Davis got stuck in an elevator and hilariously commentated it on Jones's Instagram. Like, that was the funniest thing to come out of Baltimore in a long time. Did you see this?
I didn't see that, man. I didn't get it. I didn't get share with everyone else for those of us that didn't get a chance to see it as well.
Oh, it was great. So Adam Jones, simply AJ10 on Instagram, and Chris Davis got stuck in an elevator the night before a game. And Adam Jones, because apparently he gets cell service in this elevator, or Wi-Fi at least, took out his phone and just started going on Instagram and sharing like little 10-second bits of him and Davis in the elevator. It was the funniest thing in the Orioles world all week.
Well, I think that's what you have to submit to when your team is that bad. You just have to go with what's interesting and what's funny.
Oh, absolutely. You sometimes have to have that. I remember a few years ago when the Toronto Maple Leafs were midway through having the worst season in team history at a Halloween game when this year's Leafs went as last year's Leafs and got beat 4-0. There was someone from a radio station in Toronto that looked out in the audience and said, "There's a bunch of people wearing Where's Waldo costumes." So he went around the Air Canada Center and found every single one of them because the game was not important and it didn't matter, and because why not? Where's Waldo? That was the story of the game.
Why not? I think that's great, and obviously that's one guy. I love that in sports when guys are, you might be having a bad season, but you can still find the joy in what you're doing and the fact that you're still playing a sport for a living. So why not have fun with it, even in the midst of a terrible season? Max, let's talk about the Orioles. Let's move on from the Orioles and let's talk about some other teams that have been historically terrible in sports. Now, Max, I'm going to bring it up because, you know what? I don't think I've pressed your buttons very much in this show, and I just have to do it right now. Talking about one of the worst teams ever in sports history, the 1974-75 Washington Capitals.
Yep.
Max, losing 39 of 40 road games, ending the season with an 8-67-5 record.
They were the worst expansion team in history, in any sport ever. They suck. Their one road win came in March, and to celebrate said road win, they paraded a trash can around the locker room, calling it the Stanley Can, because they finally won a road game. They sucked. They were awful, and there's no sugarcoating it. They were bad.
I had to get in a Washington Nationals national. I'll get in a Nationals jab in here too. It looks like they're really in contention for the division there, huh, Max? No, I'll just.
Yeah. You know what? Whatever. It was a telling story on Monday night when the Masson television feed had technical difficulties and couldn't actually show the Nationals blow the lead. Yeah, that was bad.
That's when you know it's bad. Your broadcast is so bad that it can't show how bad your team is doing at the time.
Yep. Your discretion is advised.
All right, Max. So that's just one example of a team that has been historically terrible at one given season. Give us another example of a few bad teams that you've been able to come up with.
Oh my goodness! How are we remiss to forget the Toronto Maple Leafs of just a few seasons ago, who pretty much they were trying to be bad. Like the Maple Leafs of a few years ago, before they drafted Austin Matthews, were trying to suck. I just don't think that there's another way to put it, but they were just bad. Like they were trying to stink.
Yeah, and let's go back to the gridiron here for a second. We were talking about baseball, we're talking about hockey. Let's talk about the 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You were talking about one of the worst expansion teams of all time. The Buccaneers might have your Washington Capitals beat. As an expansion team, the 76 Buccaneers went 0-14. Now, of course, you're going to win at least a game in hockey, but the Buccaneers were awful. 0-14 to start out their brand new franchise.
Now, how could we ever forget 2008, the Detroit Lions?
Now we had to touch on them next. Because they're the only team to go 0-16.
Yep. How could we forget the perfect 4-0 preseason, followed by 16 consecutive losses? How could we forget that?
Now, I really like that 2008 Detroit Lion team because I was there to watch them get lucky number 16. It was the last game of the season at Lambeau Field. It was cold. Aaron Rodgers was a newer quarterback, and he led the Packers victorious to get the Lions their 16th loss. I think that's right. My dad was there. My dad hates the Lions. It's his least liked team ever, and he was there. I think he enjoyed watching the Lions go 0-16 than he did actually watching the Packers win.
I mean, hey, you got to also admit, last year's Cleveland Browns, they were pretty bad too.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I said that the Lions, they were the only team to go. They were the only team to go 0-16, right? Shame on me. They were the first team to go 0-16.
They were just the first. You're wrong.
Yeah. And you know what? We talked about the NFL. We talked about Major League Baseball and hockey. Let's touch on a terrible team in the NBA to end this segment. The 2011-2012 Charlotte Bobcats.
They stunk. They were the worst.
Yeah. At the end, a .106 winning percentage. Now the season was shortened because of a lockout, but the Bobcats 106 winning percentage to end the season. That is the worst a team has done for the NBA. The Bobcats they take home that distinction. So you have to be a special kind of bad in the NBA to finish like that.
For sure. And I think we've hit a lot of major sports, but my Wild Wednesday, as we get to it now, I think you're going to like this one.
Let's hear it. Going into directly Wild Wednesday. Max, can't wait to hear it.
All right. So the Arena Football League is one of my favorite leagues. I love the indoor football game. It's fun, it's high scoring, it's fast paced, and if I get a ball in the audience, I get to keep it. I love that aspect. However, this year's AFL had 4 teams: Albany, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington. Washington went 2-10 on the regular season. They stunk. They were bad. So the thing is with this 4-team league, everybody makes the playoffs, and they have a 2-week first round, where the combined score of those 2 games account for who gets to advance to the championship. The championship is coming up this Saturday, and it will be between the Baltimore Brigade, who earned it, and the Washington Valor, with 3 total wins on the season. The Washington Valor eked out a 47-40 win over the Albany Empire this past weekend to win on an aggregate score of 103-97 to advance to the Arena Bowl, which will be played at the Royal Farms Arena between the Baltimore Brigade and the Washington Valor. It is worth repeating because it is that weird.
When are they playing that game? Directly after the Flint, Michigan Mega Bowl, played by the Tropics?
No, they'll be playing it after their halftime show will be the Bikini Bottom Super Band, and just a bunch of SpongeBob characters will come out of the field. Nope, it's just going to be fun. Honestly, if I have a day off on Saturday, I'm going to that game.
And I think that's really the way you have to treat sports at that level now. You really just have to have fun with it. You can't take it too seriously. You just really have to have fun with it and what it's about. You have some still somewhat pretty decent athletes still playing a game, and it's fun to watch, right? That's what it's about.
Oh, it was so great. The first leg of the semifinal series was a 1-point game in Washington. It was a very entertaining game. And looking around the league, it was like, Washington could eke this one out. They just have to win by 2, and they ended up winning by 7. Oh, it was so much fun to see a bunch of disappointed Empire fans wandering out in their orange gear in Albany. It was so funny to watch, especially with how bad this team's been. Oh, I'm so excited. They have a chance to play for the Arena Bowl.
Hey, let's go from one obscure sport into another. I touched on it, I think it was 2 weeks ago. We were talking about what was the Junior Basketball Association, something run by LeVar Ball. Of course, it's his Big Baller brand, and every team in the league, their nickname is the Ballers. But let's touch on the most recent. What's that? Hello?
Keith, I was losing you every other word. Are you good?
Hello?
Hey, Keith, I'm still here.
Okay, sorry. I lost you there for a second. All right.
Yeah, I was losing you every other word or so I was having trouble hearing you there.
Okay. Sorry about that. Let's try to end this out before we completely lose it all together. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right, Max, let's go from one obscure sport into another. The Junior Basketball Association, run by LeVar Ball and his Big Baller brand, features his 2 youngest sons. Obviously, Lonzo is in the NBA and he's doing his thing. But we can, of course, not forget about LiAngelo and LaMelo Ball, who play for the Los Angeles team in the JBA. They combined for a total 101 points in their team's 130-122 win versus the Chicago Ballers. The LA Ballers and the Chicago Ballers, of course, played in a huge rivalry, and the Ball brothers combined for a total 101 in their win. And it's hard to imagine that this league is anything other than a ploy to get his son some major stats to confuse NBA teams that these guys are really at that level of basketball.
I think this is where you get into the problem of, okay, now Keith, let me bring up something. I have a 3-point-something GPA from Boston University. That's pretty good, right?
Sure.
If I were to transfer to, I don't know, let's say the University of Alaska or something. Not to diss Alaska for a second, but how much higher do you think my GPA would be if I was at a lower school than a non-Ivy League school?
Depends on what level class you take, Max.
It is true. You make a good point. But for comparison's sake, I'm an okay student at BU. Right. If I were to transfer to another university, and I would have probably a higher GPA if I took a step down. This is what this is for the Ball brothers. This is a step down from more intense competition, and they're looking like the biggest fish in the pond because that's exactly what they are.
Yeah. You're exactly right, and like I said, I really think that's what this league exists for, is to really pump up his sons. And hey, like I said, you have to appreciate these sports and these leagues for what they are, and if that's what they are, great. You obviously have a little bit more talent in there than that, and I think that LeVar is, obviously in this to try to make money, but there's no doubt that this Los Angeles team was developed for these two younger Ball brothers to play in to pump up their stats and to make headlines to try to get teams attracted to them. Now, I've said it in the past. I don't think there's any way that LaMelo is an NBA talent. We'll see about LiAngelo moving forward. I keep getting confused about what these, the names of these ball brothers. They're like the Kardashians of basketball. It's hard to keep track of them all.
Well, there's a bunch of them. They have a strange dysfunctional family at the top, and they have a reality show that people apparently watch despite it being on an obscure network. We'll call Facebook a network for argument's sake. The Balls of the Kardashians of basketball. I think that's an apt comparison.
All right, and I think that is a great way to end this Wednesday show for Keith Hoehne and Max Wolpoff on the Cheap Seats. Don't forget to check out our podcast and many other podcasts on iTunes and Google Podcasts, and of course on the phmedia.com, where there are so many other great Public House Media podcasts. And don't forget to like our Facebook page, where there's another show, Coffee with Keith and Katie. There is a shameless plug for my other show that I do with my wife on Facebook Live. But when you're also at our Facebook page, don't forget to check out the poll question. Of course, we talked about it earlier in the show. How many teams should be in the college football playoff? 4, 8, 16, 24, 32. We could go on and on and on. Don't forget to let us know what you think there. For Keith Hoehne and Max Wolpoff, it has been a pleasure talking sports with you all on this Wednesday. Don't forget to check out the Friday show, the Monday show, and then, of course, we'll be back with you once again a week from now for our Wednesday show. Everyone have a great week, and we will talk to you later for more Cheap Seats on Squadcast FM on Public House Media.